Today we're going to dive in headfirst to why so many people are packing up their lives and heading to the Peach State. Spoiler alert, it's not the peaches. According to the US Census, in a 2024 report, the fifth most moved to state in the US is Georgia. Yes, the Peach State received about 312,000 out-of-staters, while sending about 210,000 to the other 50 states. The top three states were Florida sent them 55,000, while Texas sent 25,000, and New York sent 22,000. And I know people are going to ask, so here it is. California sent 16,000, while Georgia sent California about 12,000. I always get random comments or emails from people saying, well, California sent over 1 million people to my state. No, it didn't happen. The state that received the most Californians was Texas, and that was only 94,000. Nowhere near 1 million. So it's obvious that Georgia is a very popular state for relocation. But why? That's the question we answer today. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, the military presence. Not everyone goes to Georgia willingly. I was one of them back in the 1980s. Some are sent there with the military, but a lot of them fall in love with the state and they decide it's their new home when they get out. Georgia's home to some of the most significant military installations in the country. You've got Fort Benning, which is now Fort Moore. You've got Fort Gordon, which is now Fort Eisenhower. Of course, Fort Stewart, Robins Air Force Base, and a handful of smaller installations, which include Navy and Coast Guard. This means there's a lot of fresh faces showing up every single year. Georgia has almost 70,000 active duty military living in the state right now. Most will stay for a couple years and move on to someplace else while being replaced by new military faces. But over the decades, almost more than any other state, when people get out of the military, they stay in Georgia. Only Texas and California have more. As of 2023, there were 607,000 veterans living in Georgia. When you combine the families, which we call dependents and also are considered being part of the military, you have about 1.5 or 1.6 million, depending on the study you look at. That's around 10% of Georgia's 11 million population. I did a few stretches in Georgia while I was in the Army. I like the state. Compared to other places I was stationed, the locals have less of a bad attitude towards the military. This helps when making a decision on where to retire or where to live after the military. Believe it or not, a lot of people join the military to get out of wherever they're living. So while they're in, they're on the hunt for a new place to put roots down. There are only 1 or 2 states that are probably better for the military or veterans than I can think of. And it's probably Texas is really the only one, in my opinion. Number 9, the weather. It's a subtle form of chaos. Georgia's weather has a certain unpredictable to it. Will it be 85 degrees and sunny, or will you suddenly find yourself in a monsoon while wearing flip-flops? The beauty is the mystery. Who needs consistent seasons when you can experience all 4 in 1 week? There's a reason the most common phrase in small talk in Georgia is, how about this weather? The weather, though, in Georgia is really attractive for a lot of people, especially if they're coming from up north. Georgia's a lot like Florida when it comes to the weather, and, people from New York, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, they head south in retirement. They head south when they're just tired of snow. Not everyone wants to move to Florida, so you got places like South Carolina and Georgia that pick up a lot of those people. Not like I've lived in Georgia, 40 years or something like that, but the handful of years that I lived there, I saw some freezing rain. That was about it. I think maybe a dusting or two. It's been a lot of years, but it wasn't that bad. I enjoyed the weather of Georgia. There's a saying in Atlanta, though, there's only 2 seasons, summer and Christmas. So if you don't like the cold and you don't want to live in Florida, you're going to end up in Georgia probably. Number 8, Southern hospitality. Bless your heart. Now, first of all, I gotta tell you, bless your heart is an insult. It doesn't sound like it, and especially coming from a Southern accent, it really sounds nice, but there's something else there. And it's basically them telling you you're an idiot. When someone, I'm talking to them and they say something stupid, my go-to line is, are you impaired in some manner that I haven't picked up on yet? But in Georgia, or pretty much most of the South, if you say something stupid, they say, oh, bless your heart. What they're really saying is, oh, bless your heart, you're mentally challenged, aren't you? Does your employer get a tax break for hiring you? Georgians are so nice, they'll insult you to your face, and you'll thank them for it. Move to Georgia and you'll get wrapped up in a sugary blanket of politeness. Moving to Georgia means embracing this culture and possibly developing a sweet tea addiction whenever you talk to someone. I talk all the time, and I notice friends that were from Georgia or whatever, and they don't mind just sitting someplace and staring and hanging out with you, but they don't need to talk the whole time. Coming from Southern California and being a very talkative person, this was weird for me. So if you don't like talking all the time and you just like to hang out with your friends and maybe just fish and stare at the water, Georgia's a great place, and a person from Georgia is a great person to do it with. Number 7, the food scene. Calories don't count in Georgia. Georgia's culinary offerings are a mix of deep-fried everything, barbecue, and soul food that can only be described as worth the cholesterol. Sure, you might shorten your lifespan with daily fried chicken, but you'll be smiling through every single bit. Plus, there's a constant debate about where to find the best peach cobbler, which is a state-sanctioned pastime, I think. College football tailgating has some of the best food that I've ever had in Georgia. I've been to a couple different places for tailgating, but the 4 college football games I've been to in Georgia, 3 for Georgia and 1 for Georgia Tech, that was some of the best tailgate food I've ever had. Barbecue everything. And yes, I will tell you right now, every single one of them, someone had peach cobbler with them. That's no joke. But a lot of you might think, why does the food matter when someone's moving someplace? It does play a big part in the decision making for a lot of people. May not be your thing, but it certainly is for a lot of other people. Number 6, affordable cost of living. Yeah, if you ignore egg prices. Compared to some other states, New York and California, Georgia is downright reasonable. Is it the cheapest state in the country? No, but it's the number 5 most moved to state. And when you rank states by the cost of living, they're the 16th cheapest state to live in. Sure, inflation means your groceries might cost a small fortune, but housing? That's another story. Where else can you buy a 5-bedroom house for the price of a studio apartment in New York City? And if you're willing to live outside of Atlanta, you'll probably be able to afford a big yard enough for a pool, a trampoline, a barbecue, a porch swing, and a few peach trees, if that's your thing. But if you got that big backyard, bug spray. Make sure you have plenty of bug spray. If you're coming from someplace like Oregon where we really don't have a lot of bugs, or California, you'll learn. Trust me, you'll learn. Gnats, mosquitoes. Now, I didn't just say Oregon and California don't have bugs at all. They just don't have as many annoying ones. But that won't matter because you're saving so much money on real estate. And there's always going to be someone that says, oh, the real estate's not that cheap. Well, maybe not for you. But Georgia is a very popular state. And compared to the other popular states, the average home value is anywhere from 20 to 50% cheaper. Number 5, the film industry. Georgia's tax credits have turned it into a mecca for filmmakers. You could barely walk outside of places like Atlanta without stumbling into a movie set, which is thrilling until you realize that it's delayed your dinner plans or makes you late getting back to the office from lunch. Want to be an extra in a zombie apocalypse scene? Georgia's got you covered. Just don't be surprised when you see your neighborhood convenience store in the latest blockbuster. Here's a list of some of the bigger movies that were filmed in Georgia. 42, which was a great movie about Jackie Robinson. Identity Theft, Remember the Titans, Driving Miss Daisy, parts of a lot of the different Marvel movies, a few of the Hunger Game movies, one of my favorites from like 20 years ago, Bagger Vance, and of course, Burt Reynolds' famous Gator. Now, they'd always film movies there, but usually it was Georgia as a backdrop because the movie was based around the South or something like that. Like Gator is a perfect example. Driving Miss Daisy's another one. But whole studios have opened up in Georgia now. Number 4, college football obsession. Yeah, a lot of people would probably think, that you don't move to a state because of college football obsession. It might not be the number one thing for a lot of you, but if you're on the fence and you're into college football, that might be a deciding factor, or at least help push you over the edge. But college football isn't just a sport in Georgia. It's a religion. Saturdays in fall are sacred, and the Georgia Bulldogs are worshipped as if they're leading people to salvation. If you're not ready to pledge your allegiance to red and black, you might as well pack up your bags. Bonus points if you can navigate the tailgate I talked about earlier without spilling your drinks or offending someone's mom's famous dip recipe. It is a big deal. College football, they got Georgia Tech, they got some other universities, but the Georgia Bulldogs. This entire state takes great pride in that football team. Number 3, nature galore. From mountains to marshes. Georgia's like a sampler platter for the great outdoors. You've got the Blue Ridge Mountains for hiking, Savannah Marshlands for kayaking, and beaches like Tybee Island for soaking up the sun. I've been to Tybee Island a few times. I like it. It's really nice. It's a little different from the Southern California beaches I was used to, but I still had a good time. It was nice. It was beautiful. Whether you're into Instagram-worthy views or just need an excuse to avoid emails, Georgia's natural beauty is there for you. Number 2, quirky small towns. If the cities aren't your thing, Georgia's small towns is where it's at. Places like Helen, a Bavarian-style village in the middle of nowhere, or Madison, which looks like it's straight out of a Nicholas Sparks movie. If you don't know those movies, it was like The Notebook, A Walk to Remember, The Longest Ride, Dear John, those type movies. Georgia's small towns is where I got my obsession about learning about the United States. When I was there, I would go out on the weekends and just visit some of these small towns, eat at little diners. This was long before YouTube was, I think it was long before the internet was a thing. Maybe not a thing, it was still there, just hadn't taken off yet. I would just go to these small towns, look around, take pictures with a film camera, talk to the locals. It was a good time. I really enjoyed that part of my life. But these towns have the charm, character, and just the right amount of, is this real life type feeling. These are the towns that'll make you question why you ever lived in a big city. I mean, if you go to Zillow and just look at any small town in Georgia, you'll find how affordable it is. You can buy homes for cheap. Like randomly, I'm gonna look at one. Cochran, Georgia, which is southeast of Macon, Georgia, and Robbins Air Force Base. You can buy an acre and a half in a new development area, you build your own home there, for $43,000. But a decent home, ready to go, a couple decades old, you could find those from $150,000 to $250,000. And that's just one of hundreds and hundreds of small towns in Georgia, just waiting for people. And that's where they're going. All right, before we get to number 1, if you're thinking about moving to Georgia or any other state in the US, there's a link in the description area below for a website called Home and Money. They can get you in touch with a real estate agent anywhere in the country. They got a bunch of other cool things on their website to help you with your, real estate adventure. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, jobs. Yes, jobs. Georgia is drawing people in with jobs. For the most part, this has been happening in the Atlanta metro area, but some of the smaller cities have made gains in recent years. Now, they are ranked 24th for jobs overall. 4 years ago, they were ranked 36th. And their job growth is expected to grow for at least the next 5 years. If you look at the top 10 reasons people relocate to any state, jobs are almost always in the top 3. Hawaii is the only state that has jobs outside the top 5 at number 8. Oregon has it at 3, right behind number 2, which is wanting to be closer to Briggs. Of all the southern states, behind North Carolina and Texas, if you consider Texas a southern state, a lot of people consider it a western state, but job growth is number 2 or 3 when you rank it up against all southern states. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, you'll probably enjoy one of the 2 videos being suggested right now. Everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other.